There's a photograph that's going around the internet at the moment. It's going around social space. It's been turned into a meme, and it shows a little girl. I guess she must be probably 8 years old. I don't know, 8 to 10 years old, something like that. Could be younger. And a man, presumably her father, and they're German football supporters. And basically, the little girl's crying, and the father is comforting her. This came in the context, apparently, of England fans deciding to boo the German national anthem. Um, I don't really follow football. I watched a bit of the World Cup in 2018 just because it was a World Cup. So the other night, I'm pleased England done well. Like I said, I didn't follow the event closely, so I can't make any commentary on results specifically or anything like that. But England done well, right? Beat Germany. Um, I'm British, of course. When any of the four nations does well in a sporting event, of course that's good. That's something to celebrate. And I think in this country we can be proud of our sporting prowess. I mean, to look at boxing, for example, we currently have the two best heavyweights in the world. Um, Indeed, we've produced many great fighters over the years. In Olympics, we are an Olympic superpower. We are one of the most successful countries all round. I mean, I think we rank third or something by total number of medals. Um, and there's many examples of great British sporting prowess. And obviously, there's certain countries in terms of football which we have old rivalries with. Germany is one of them. Argentina is another. Um, so naturally, England beating Germany is a big thing. I understand all that, but my sentiments at the time when I heard that England had done well, that's great, and now the idiots are going to come out. Honestly, that was my first reaction, and I think it's been vindicated. I don't think there's been quite the repeat of the scenes in 2018 when a bunch of louts went into the IKEA store and not quite trashed the place, but they threw their weight around, and there was, as I recall, a police car that was vandalized outside. I'm going to cut to the chase. This country has a problem with people who cannot control themselves at sporting events. It's a problem. I'm talking about sporting events because I think it is beyond just football. That's why I'm not just talking about football hooliganism. And here's the thing: it's there's hooliganism, which is we tend to think, particularly in the 70s and 80s, it was known as the British disease because we had such a problem. And we tend to think of, pumped up guys, usually boozed up, sometimes belonging to a particular firm, um, and, completely trashing the place, particularly during Euro Cup matches in Amsterdam and other parts of mainland Europe. And they took pride in the fact they had this notorious reputation. And it wasn't just the English, it was the Scots as well. The so-called Tartan Army, more often than not, behaved in this sort of way. So, there was a particularly British problem. Now, I don't believe that this country is by any means unique in this regard. If we look around the world, North Africa has a very serious problem. A few years ago, there was people killed in a football stampede in Egypt, and I think hooliganism had been cited as a factor in that. Of course, we have echoes of Hillsborough in Britain where that can sometimes be cited when it's not a factor. In the case of Hillsborough, of course, that's become a very controversial thing in this country, but it doesn't change the fact that we have a problem. Um, like I say, it can be found in other countries. So I spoke about North Africa, countries like Algeria, Egypt, Morocco, certainly Russia, the Balkans, probably Iran to an extent, and definitely some countries in Latin America where football is almost like a religion. In fact, there was a war, an actual armed conflict fought between Honduras and El Salvador in 1969 70, and this wasn't a small thing. 2,000 people died. So to me, it's crazy that people could be so passionate about a sport to the point where they would be prepared to kill. Um, there's another problem with this, which is that when a particular football team loses, studies have shown that the reports of domestic violence incidents actually go up because you get some guy who's angry that his team lost, so he takes it out on his wife or girlfriend. It's a real problem. Um, Now, before I get accused of putting a wet blanket on or a dampener on celebrations, I'm well aware that the majority of fans don't behave this way. But here's the problem: it isn't just a small marginal issue. This is predictable every single time. Every single time. When England does well, you can guarantee some people will behave like louts. So in the case of this meme I spoke about at the start of the video, um, there is something seriously degenerate and messed up about someone who would make a little girl cry and not even have the humility to stop and think, okay, let's not do that. Um, I think booing another country's national anthem is very crass. I remember when David Hay fans booed the Ukrainian national anthem when he fought Vladimir Klitschko. As a boxing fan, and as someone who greatly respects the great Vladimir Klitschko, I was very embarrassed by that. You know, he shouldn't have had to put up with that. And it's not just an insult to his country, but he was booed when he went to the weigh-in. In boxing terms, you get rowdy behavior sometimes from American fans, from Canadians. I've seen it in a lot of countries. In Mexico, it's a big problem. Again, where they take it to another level. I mean, in Mexico, I've heard that if a fighter's deemed to be not doing well enough, they'll actually chuck stuff at him in the ring. I think that's disgusting. And I don't think any level of passion for a sport justifies treating other human beings in that way. I think it's reprehensible. In Brazil, a few years ago, actually, I think it was the Olympics at Rio de Janeiro. There was a French, I think he was French, he was European, I think French guy, um, and I forget the precise event, but basically the crowd left the guy in tears. Now, this guy's an Olympian. He's not a delicate person, but the way they were jeering him and booing him, absolutely disgusting. So, getting back to this country, acknowledging that's a problem in other countries doesn't mean that we should say, oh well, it is a particular problem in the UK, I believe, and uh, I think it should be definitely taken seriously because there's this kind of mindset you get with louts where I'm saying louts is a more generic term rather than hooligans because, booing an anthem isn't quite the same as two groups of guys beating the hell out of each other. I think it's also wrong, but it's a different kind of bad behavior. I call it loutishness. But anyone who's ever been on a train, say you've went on a day trip and you come back and you get on, there's few things more unpleasant than a bunch of football fans completely tanked up, getting on, throwing the weight around, and because they're happy, because they're in a celebratory mood, they're not aware of that they are imposing on other people. Not all of us are obsessed by football, and I'm sick and tired of this idea that only their feelings count. I mean, there's also incidentally with this particular I think it was the UEFA Cup final. I really don't know what the precise event was, but there is an argument why allow thousands of spectators into an arena or into pubs for that matter to watch this, whilst there's still social distancing measures in place. People cannot attend funerals still. At least not, I think the limit's 20 people and there's social distancing. So there is real double standards going on here. And There's people cannot see relatives. Yet you get football fans can come in, no social distancing, no masks, and some of them, okay, it might be a minority, but it's a vocal minority, make a complete ass out of themselves. They behave in this ugly, jingoistic way. And I think it is strength in numbers. I think that individually they probably wouldn't be that behave like that. It's like this kind of thing where you're in a group, and it's mostly men, but there probably is a few females as well who behave this way. Um, and it's just reprehensible because it's like you're grown men and you're behaving like animals. What the hell is wrong with you? I don't accept that it's just banter or it's just celebrating because other countries, I mentioned earlier that, there are other countries with this problem. There's also a lot of other countries that don't have this problem. I would give an example. Japanese sports fans seem to be really well behaved. You know, they're enthusiastic, but it seems to be maybe it's a cultural thing. I understand, for example, in Japan, public displays of anger and stuff is shunned. But in Europe, and particularly in the UK, it's almost like expected, and I think that more can be done personally. I think, for example, there should be a stipulation if someone buys a ticket for an event, that they'll behave in a respectful way to the opposition, i.e., not boo a national anthem. And I honestly think some people might say this is heavy-handed, but I honestly think people who are booing a national anthem, I think they need to be. I would propose some sort of point system whereby maybe not kick them out the first time, but issue them with a warning or something. I just think that there has to be something to rein on this behavior. I think they definitely need to be stigmatized. I think they need to be shamed. I'm not talking about getting them individually and sort of destroying their life in that sense. I wouldn't go that far, but I do think the general behavior needs to be stigmatized and shamed. Personally, if I was an employer and I saw someone, I had an employee who behaved that way, I'd fire their ass. I would kick them right out of my business because I wouldn't want someone like that working for me. Um, and it goes without saying there is jingoistic and racist overtones. Now, some might make a connection to Brexit. I think that's a little bit misguided. Firstly, that'll just bring about the whole divisions around Brexit, where leave people get all defensive and say, "Oh, let's stop tarring us with the same brush," and then it just becomes like a tribal thing. I think, to be honest, this is a problem that we've always had, and I think it existed long before Brexit. It might be that there are some people who feel a little bit galvanized by Brexit to behave this way, but I don't really give much credence to that theory. I think it's more that they would have behaved this way either way. I don't really think Brexit's got anything to do with it. The only reason I mention that is because some people might suggest it as a factor, but I would point out that we have long had a problem with this. Um, but I do think more can be done. Football, to be fair, their show racism, the red card was relatively effective. Whilst there is still racism in football, I don't think it is the same level as it was in the 70s and 80s, because today you'd have individuals making racist chants, maybe even a group. But in the 70s, it was like a generic attitude. It was really a big problem back then. I would suggest a bigger problem than it is today. So I do think some things have improved, but at the same time, we can't say this is a small issue. We can't say it's just one or two individuals. There's a lot of people involved in this behavior. It's not one or two individuals. It's groups of idiots. And the cards as well, because they're hiding behind numbers. Um, but what does need to be challenged is this notion that it's banter or they're just having a good time. If that's how they behave when England wins, how would they behave when England loses? Well, I think we know the answer. So, I have total contempt for such people because they impose on others, they embarrass this country, and it's also like go to any British city centre. Coronavirus has changed things a bit, but go to any British city centre when a match is going on in this sort of way, and you'll see police everywhere. It's sad that it has to be that way because some people cannot control themselves, and they just. I do think that it needs to be stigmatized as a behavior. I actually, I probably wouldn't have a problem shaming such people. I'm not talking about absolutely destroying their life, but I think there needs to be a deterrent. There has to be a deterrent rather than just criticizing it. There has to be a deterrent. And I'm not sure if there is one at the moment. So I would propose tougher penalties. I would propose, yeah, maybe shaming them. Having said that, there can be no mistakes. So, for example, if you have a crowd of thousands of people and someone's behaving in a loutish way, and let's say they're wearing a red top and they've got dark hair and they're tall or something like that, you can't get another guy who's wearing a red top and dark hair and he's tall and falsely accuse him of being. So, having said that, there must be no mistakes in terms of identifying people. But yeah, I think more needs to be done because as a Briton, I am proud of our sporting prowess, but I'm embarrassed by the fact that every single time, predictably, there are yobs and louts who just have to ruin the atmosphere by their stupid behaviour, by their jingoistic behaviour. It's disgusting, actually, and they need to look at themselves. Anyone who would make a little girl cry and not stop themselves there and then, it's absolutely disgusting.